next thing we need to talk about is safety while using the machine. The first and foremost, obviously, is safety glasses. You must wear eye protection while using this machine. Second, the size of the block that you use is going to be very important. If I use a very small block to cut on this machine, two problems. One is there's no support behind this side of that block, and so if I start cutting, it's potentially going to get sucked up in there. The second problem is that my hand is dangerously close to the blade at this point. The rule of thumb in my shop is your project must be at least 6 inches long to be able to use the chop saw safely. At 6 inches, I have just enough room to hold this tight against the fence and still keep my 4 inches away from the blade. The second thing is I need to keep this tight to the fence. If I move this out even 1/4 of an inch and bring this saw down, the blade is moving at a very fast RPM, and if I was to catch this, it would throw it against the fence because there's no support, and after it hit the fence, it would continue that process, and usually it throws it up and into the ceiling or at the most innocent passing bystander that's standing around you. Okay, I'm going to put a project against the fence here. I have a block of wood, and we're going to do a quick demonstration on what would happen if you were to not hold your project exactly against the fence when you cut it. I'm going to leave this about 1/4 inch out. To keep this safely against the fence, what I like to do is take this clamp and place it right between my middle of my fingers there, and at that point I know I cannot get my hand close enough to touch the blade. If I hold onto that with my fingers, I know I can clamp my board there and still cut safely. I need to keep that 4 inches of distance, but this is a good rule of thumb to hold that on there so that I know my hand is not too close. Another thing that's important here is to never start the machine when the blade is touching the piece of wood. If I had a mark on my board that I wanted to cut it off at, the tendency is to bring the saw down and get an accurate cut. Once you have an accurate cut, a lot of students will forget that it's down there and immediately turn on the machine. However, if I turn it on down there, two things will happen. One, it will grab my board and potentially throw it up in the machine. The second is it'll have a tear out right there because it'll be grabbing a lot more wood than it needs to. Whenever you turn on the machine, make sure it is in the up position. The reason for that is because of centrifugal force. If I turn on the machine down here, every action requires an equal and opposite reaction, and as that blade spins, it'll cause the motor to jump. As I turn this machine on, this machine will kick a little bit. On a very small machine like this, it's not as pronounced, but when you get to a 12-inch or a 15-inch chop saw, there will be an extreme amount of kick. So it's always best to have the machine at a full upright position before turning it on. Here the machine is forced against itself and it won't move on that situation. When I come down to make a cut, I'm going to eyeball and check my cut first, and then I bring the saw all the way back up to the top. When I cut, if it's a small block, I can bring it straight down and cut. However, if I'm going to make a full depth cut on this saw, where the board comes all the way to the farthest point that I can cut, if I was to cut in right here, this blade acts as a wheel, and if I push in a little too fast, there's the chance for this blade to drive along. So as I'm cutting into it, if it grabs, it will want to drive towards me. To stay away from that option, or that chance, what I can do is turn the saw on at the top, bring it to its full capacity out, and then go down at this point. At this point, there's no place for it to drive to, and I can go all the way down and then all the way back in. On a full capacity depth cut, it's always best to cut from the outside to the inside so that there's not the chance for it to want to drive up onto the board. Another issue that I have is students that want to cut their project really fast. They're nervous, or they don't understand the machine, or they just want to be done with it. However, when this blade is spinning around really fast, if I bring that down into it, if it doesn't have enough room to cut before I force it into the next layer of wood, it will actually either one, which is the best option, stop the blade, or two, it will grab that board and try and yank it up. It's best with this machine, just like the bandsaw. Slow is better than fast. If I cut down slow and drag it across very slowly, there's no chance of me having that piece of wood explode on me. I'm going to show you a cut at this time. If I was to cut that mark right there, what I would do. So I bring it down, I check it, make sure that it's right where I want it to be. I'm going to place that clamp between my fingers there and hold my board hard against this fence. Now I bring the machine all the way back up to the top, I turn it on, and as I lower it, I will bring the machine out and then cut back in. This machine will not cut itself. You need to wait till the machine has come to a full stop before grabbing your project out from underneath. I've seen students cut through their blocks before and feel like they've cut their whole block, but in actuality they haven't finished the cut. Let me give you an example. At this point, they feel like doing the happy dance because they have finished their cut. However, when you pick the project up, you'll notice they still have a good 1/4 inch to an 1/8 inch of material left on that block. And in that circumstance, you either need to come back down and reline up your cut, or else make another cut completely. You need to make sure you cut all the way to the bottom and all the way to the back with a compound slide saw.